from Cairns, North Queensland, Australia. Welcome to the GCN Show.
Welcome to the GCN Show.
This week, teamwork or backstabbing? Get your head around the fragile cycling team dynamics with our handy 4-point guide.
We've got Mr. T, we've got possibly the world's most dedicated parents, and we've got chalk and cheese in the tech section.
Indeed, and we've got Emma Pooley. Emma, I tell you what, it feels kind of different, you know. Emma?
Why? I mean, like nothing's changed, just
No,
present.
no, I know, just This week in the world of cycling, we learned that bike share schemes saved China $2.6 billion last year. At the same time, traffic congestion cost the United States $305 billion. So just get more people on bikes.
We also learned that much as we love road bikes, sometimes we do have to recognise that they're just not the right tools for the job.
No. Vittorio Bramotti there, defying death in his own inimitable way.
This week, we were also once again left asking the question, at what point does teamwork constitute backstabbing?
Yeah, at the Volta Ao Algarve, Geraint Thomas of Team Sky was comfortably in the lead going into the final day. His teammate, however, Kwiatkowski, was policing a threatening breakaway. A breakaway that was never caught. Kwiatkowski masterfully got a handle on the situation, ended up taking the stage win and also the overall.
Was that teamwork? I mean, it was still a win for Team Sky, but did he work over his loyal teammate in the process? A teammate who had already led him out for a stage victory earlier in the week.
Well, yeah, it is a question that's as old as the sport itself, almost. I mean, we remember such rivalries as Le Monde and Eno at the 1986 Tour de France. I mean, even when a teammate just looks a little bit strong, like Team Sky's Froome-Landa dynamic at the 2017 Tour de France.
Or Team Sky's Wiggins-Froome dynamic in 2012.
Well, yeah. At the end of the day, cycling is a team sport. It's all about working for your team to win and setting personal ambition to one side. But personal ambition is still very real, and that is why we get these brilliant soap operatic scenes of accusations and counter-arguments, often in public, that are all about teamwork versus backstabbing.
And how do we know which is which? Well, here is our handy guide to working out your teamwork from your backstabbing in 4 easy steps.
As cycling fans, we're not usually privy to this kind of information, but you can get a pretty good idea from the behaviour of the riders, either on the finish line or outside their team buses.
Yes, I mean, are they hugging, shouting, crying, throwing their bikes, posting angry tweets or furious Facebook comments?
Yeah, in the case of Algarve last week, if the team directive was to control the race, ride on the front, and then control the lead for Geraint Thomas, then getting in the break, even if you win, still kind of backstabbing.
In the case of Algarve, I would guess that Sky were aiming to control the break. But it's not quite that simple because team orders always have to be a little bit flexible, simply because races can pan out in so many different ways.
That's right. So if a dangerous group does go down the road, can even a strong and motivated team bring them back? Well, no, not necessarily. So it is a good idea to actually have a policeman in the break down the road.
Sky were probably rightly banking on another team chasing down the break, saving them a job, and safe in the knowledge that they had one of their very best riders up the road in an armchair position.
That's right. So in this case then, Kwiatkowski was doing his job, the dice rolled, and his team respected him enough to give him his chance, and he duly delivered.
Now, if you think that was complicated, brace yourself because it's getting worse. Hierarchy.
That's right. So bike teams have leaders and they have domestiques. Now they're not fixed roles, but generally for individual races, they are quite clearly defined.
Yeah. Now, leaders are there to try to win, and domestiques are there to help them to win. But sometimes a leader will play a role as a domestique to pay back a teammate for their hard work or give them a chance. And sometimes a leader will just gift a victory to a teammate because they can afford to.
Yeah, generally it seems that the right thing to do within a team is to reward the underdog wherever possible.
In this case, in Algarve, both riders are well decorated, and arguably Kwiatkowski even more so. So was he stealing the win? No, because both riders are proven winners.
Yeah, normally hierarchy isn't a problem on pro teams because essentially everyone is paid to do a job. But on national teams though, for major championships like the Olympics or the Worlds, it can be an issue. You would have thought that national pride would instill loyalty in a rider, but that's not always the case. There are many instances of a rider going for individual glory at the expense of the team, or even worse, being paid off by another country to work for them.
Which is pretty bad if you ask me.
Finally, no race can be seen in isolation. It's part of a season or even multi-year long balance. So if, for example, we take the case of Bernard Hinault and Greg LeMond, Hinault demanded loyalty from Greg LeMond in the 1985 Tour de France and then promised that he would repay the favour the following year. The year in which Greg LeMond did go on to win, but doing so without the committed support of his teammate.
Backstabbing.
Well, yeah. Oh, how we miss Bernard Hinault. What a legend.
Indeed, and if that's ever happened to you, you'll know it's pretty annoying.
Emma's top 5 backstabbing moments coming to a screen near you. No, seriously though, in the case of Algarve, Kwiatkowski is not only a race-winning machine, but he's also a super loyal domestique when he needs to be. So for example, well, I don't know about you, I remember very clearly during last year's Tour de France when he rode so hard for Chris Froome that he ground to a complete stop on an Alpe somewhere.
Exactly. I think the only reason we'd feel shortchanged in this case by a Kwiatkowski win is that Thomas is a super loyal teammate himself. It's in what goes around comes around.
Yeah. So basically, like all things in cycling, at the end of the day, it's about as clear as mud, which I say is a brilliant thing because actually it's part of the reason why this sport is so fascinating and I love it so much. It just makes for brilliant racing.
And maybe we should secretly applaud backstabbing because it makes for exciting racing and gruesome viewing in the aftermath.
It does indeed. Yeah. Well, let us know what you think about this. I think in the case of Algarve, it's pretty clear that that was just supreme teamwork and not backstabbing, but you might feel differently. It's a pretty nuanced situation, so let us know what you think constitutes teamwork, what is backstabbing, and do you like it?
It's now time for cycling shorts.
Cycling shorts now, and some positive news from a part of the world which sometimes makes headlines for rather more tragic reasons, in that there was a bike ride organised in Kabul, Afghanistan.
Nice.
To raise awareness of how cycling can improve traffic and pollution problems. It's all part of the Bicycle Master Plan for the city, which I think is a pretty cool title.
That is pretty cool, yeah.
Which also includes building a load of bike lanes, which is great.
Yeah.
And the race was won by women. Yep. Zakia Ahmadi crossed the line first in a mixed field.
Nice work. There's actually like quite a good female cycling scene in Afghanistan, right? They've got a national team.
They have teams, yeah.
Fantastic. Right now, elsewhere, winter sports fever has been gripping the sporting world with the Winter Olympics, of course, taking place. Sadly, there are no cycling events, although clearly there should be cyclocross. So if anyone from the IOC is watching, instead of looking at curling or ice hockey, then please take the hint. But nevertheless, one couple have managed to combine the Winter Olympics and cycling.
And we don't mean just some gentle cycle touring, nope. Guido Huvila and his wife Rita Rutiman, they rode all the way from their home in Switzerland to South Korea to watch Guido's son compete.
That's awesome.
That's 17,000 kilometres, and they passed through 20 countries on the way. And they had to set off in February 2017.
Hang on a minute, that's probably before the son had even qualified for the Olympics, right?
That is strong parental backing for you.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd say that's almost deserving of a medal in its own right. Well, Misha Gassa did qualify for the final with his dad watching on, and personally, I've got my fingers crossed that he makes it onto the podium because I just think it's such a cool story of familial support.
It is, isn't it? I tell you what, if there's some kind of difficult history, I'd probably buy the movie rights.
That would make a really cool film.
It would
and
just.
Lots of cool cycling on the way.
A cool news story from New Zealand as well now. So the website NewsHub ran a story about a man named Tea Aituro, or Mr. T. Now his is a remarkable tale. He lost 100 kilograms of body weight after his doctor gave him a bike.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and having changed his own life with a bicycle, he now runs a charity that refurbishes and gives away bikes to people that need them, which is, What a legend.
I know, amazing. Even more good vibes now, this time from an article posted by the bike lobby group, People for Bikes in the US. Now, they pointed out that if you want to increase bike use in cities, you've just got to build more protected bike lanes. Because in the Canadian city of Calgary, a move to do just that saw the number of people riding bikes in the city centre increase by 50% from one year to the next.
Amazing, and that's fuel for any town or city planners out there. Now, it might be by bad influence, but we're going to have to give a bit of a shout out to running this week.
What? Running?
Yep, now bear with me, because Peter Thompson is going to run the entire route of the Tour de France.
Huh.
Yep.
All right, fair enough.
Yep, he's giving himself a bit of a head start by 7 weeks, but he's still going to rack up 30 miles a day to cover the full 2,069 miles of the route this year.
Wow.
And he's doing it for the mental health charities Mind and Livability. And sticking with the Mind, good news in that the first blood test for concussion has just been approved by the FDA in America.
Yeah, now concussion is fortunately not something that affects cyclists quite as much as some other sports, but nevertheless, when it does, it of course has to be managed appropriately.
It works by measuring the levels of two proteins in the blood, UCHL1 and GFAP.
Two of my favourite proteins, I think, right there.
I didn't know about them until you told me, but anyway.
Neither did I.
The brain releases them into the blood after a traumatic head injury, which means that by measuring those levels in the blood, you can avoid the need for a CT scan.
That is cool, isn't it? Yeah, great development there. Right, now here is a question for you, Emma. Are the UCI rules too complicated for teams to actually understand?
In fact, they're too complicated for most of the fans to understand.
Yeah, well, they probably are, because at the recent Tour of Oman, there was quite a farce, basically. So Adam Blythe of Team Aqua Blue and GCN's unofficial head of fashion was actually disqualified for the race for an illegal bike change. The problem was that his team car, or all the team cars there, didn't have the complete bikes on the roof. The bikes are mounted without the front wheels.
Yeah, and so when Blythe needed a spare bike, the commissaire allowed his team car to pass the peloton, park up and get the bike ready with the front wheel. But that same commissaire then DQ'd Blythe because he'd taken the bike from the car by the side of the road and not from a moving car. I mean, it does sound a bit overly zealous to me.
It does, doesn't it? And to be honest with you, I was wondering how one even takes a spare bike from a moving car. I mean, that's like something out of the A-team, isn't it? So, yeah, slightly bonkers and unfortunate for Adam Blythe, but there we go.
I mean, he's still pretty cool.
Yeah, at least the rule was written down and not a flippin' unwritten one, because that really would do your head in, wouldn't it?
Awful.
Check of the week now, and Factor have just released their new One aerodynamic road bike. It's available in rim and disc brake versions, and perhaps the most notable part of it is the twin vane down tube, which basically it's got a massive hole down the middle of it.
Oh, I think you've just made at least one engineer cry with that comment, Si.
Sorry, okay. Particularly Inigo, designer at Factor Bikes, I am sorry. But genuinely, it seems like quite a good idea for design, really. On a carbon bike, most material is placed on the outside of the down tube, where it's best placed to brace it against torsional stresses, basically, so it makes the bike stiffer. So why not just go one step further and actually just remove the material from the middle completely, making it more aerodynamic because you've got a lower frontal area.
Well, one other nice feature is it's got an integrated bar and stem, which means you can have fully internal cabling, which looks super neat.
I do love it when a bike has completely hidden cables, it must be said. Right now, completely the other end of the spectrum. So the chalk from our cheese, or the cheese from our chalk. How about this new all-city cycles bike called Gorilla Monsoon?
Good name, and it couldn't be more different, could it? It's steel, 650B, and you can run up to 2.4-inch wide tyres. It's got a gazillion lugs for like bottle cages and racks and mudguards, so it's a super versatile bike.
Yeah, it's kind of more of a drop bar mountain bike almost. It does look like an awful lot of fun, but I couldn't help but notice, we've said that it couldn't be more different, but if you have a close look at those front forks, check it out. That is called a biplane design, much like the twin vane of the Focus.
Right, so it's an aero drop bar mounted bike.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's time now for racing news, which you'll remember now has its own dedicated slot on Monday's Racing News Show.
Indeed. We will expand a little bit more on the hot topic of the week, though, which was the fact that Chris Froome was back in action at the Vuelta a Andalucía. He is, of course, completely entitled to do so, despite having posted an adverse analytical finding for salbutamol, which is a restricted substance.
So it's a substance that is allowed in your bloodstream, but only up to a certain level. So he's allowed to keep racing until a hearing, when he will be hit with a ban unless he can prove that he didn't ingest too much of the drug.
Yeah. Now, the racing itself, well, presented something of an interesting dynamic, didn't it? So Froome actually said that he was well received by his peers, but then many of his peers went on to say that actually no, he wasn't well received at all. And in fact, the most outspoken rider was the eventual winner of the event, Tim Wellens, who reportedly said that actually 9 out of 10 riders would probably have rather Froome wasn't there at all.
Interestingly, when we asked you, or Dan asked you last week on the Racing News Show what you thought, 53% of you thought that Chris Froome should be racing.
Yeah. Just as well he didn't do too much there, actually, because otherwise this could be another event that has a blank spot on the top step of the podium if he does end up getting hit with some kind of sanction.
Now, I've heard it said that there must be some confidence that he can avoid a sanction if he's carrying on racing rather than, say, taking a reduced ban for admitting liability or something along those lines.
Yeah, I tell you, I am morbidly fascinated to actually find out how this pans out. But yeah, hopefully the sport of cycling comes out okay in the end. Although I tell you what, actually, the actual organisers of the Volta this year were thrilled to bits because 4 times, literally 4 times as many journalists descended on the race as normal. So maybe there is no such thing as bad publicity. It's time now for hack / nice work, bodge of the week. My favourite time of the week almost. Right, first up, we got this one from Luca Gorjup. Oh my word, that is terrifying. So he's put a pair of like drop bar, handlebar, brake gear levers on a pair of flat handlebars, meaning that he effectively can't use the brakes.
Yeah, that's not nice.
No, I think that's probably a bodge, that one, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a bit dangerous to me.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, please don't do that. In
No.
fact, take them off right now, otherwise...
Get some brakes, working brakes, very important.
Yeah, okay, right, next up we've got Christopher Dean. Now this one, Emma, I really like. He reckons he's made a Turbo Trainer rocker plate for under $10. So basically, that gives the turbo a little bit of movement when he's riding out the saddle. And look at that! An inner tube zip-tied to a board with another board placed on top to give him his suspension. You reckon that'll work?
Quite possibly. It's not pretty. I think you could at least have painted the board a nice colour. I mean, it just looks a bit...
Do you think you get pretty for $10?
Yeah, to be fair, the paint would probably cost more than that.
Yeah. He's doubled the price of
Yeah.
it, but it looks nice.
I've never had one of these rocker things. Maybe I should try. Maybe it would make turboing even more fun. Right, well, this one I spotted, and Dave King has produced an initially quite confusing-looking contraption for his kitchen using his saddle and handlebars from his bike from the 60s. He says it brings back nostalgic memories of happy rides and long days in the saddle, and I think that's really sweet, except that I'm just confused why anyone would want to spend extra time on a bike saddle.
Well, I don't know. The thing that's confusing me is that is a massive saddle to bar drop there. It's going to put him in a pretty unaero position, actually, despite the distance. So
I think the bars are for his feet to rest on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, that makes more
Yeah.
sense. Oh, that's quite a hack then, actually.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I do wonder if he also sits in the kitchen in his bike shorts, like to make it more comfy.
Yeah, that doesn't count as training time. It might be chamois time, but it's not training
No.
time. Right, next up we got this.
That was a hack, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a hack.
Yeah.
Yeah, a hack. Simon Keys spotted an interesting solution to walking the dog, which is, well, presumably if you don't want to walk your dog, you want to ride with your dog. I was going to get myself into all sorts of hot water there. Right, anyway, frankly, this looks horrific, but yeah, basically, he's got 2 dog leads attached to the back of a bike.
Maybe his dog is super fast and he just can't keep up walking.
Well, that is true, actually. Have you seen those events, running events, where you get towed by your dog?
Canicross, yeah, it's a big deal in Belgium. Yeah, I had a DS whose daughter was like world champion.
There we go.
Yeah.
So maybe if you put the leads on the other end of your bike, you could just get towed like an e-bike.
I actually saw that once. I saw like a sledge with wheels with some huskies training in summer, dragging the sledge.
That's quite cool, actually.
Yeah, it was really weird.
Well, maybe you're onto something, Simon.
Yeah.
Lastly, from Ed Rush, he reckons he's built his own chain tensioner out of zip ties. I'm not sure you have, Ed. That is my first reaction. Emma, what's your reaction to this one?
I have to confess I've never used a single speed or a fixie, so I've never had to have a chain tensioner. You explain.
Well, so my thoughts are that you've tensioned the chain above the chainstay where it's going to be under load when you start pedaling. So presumably this was about to fail several seconds after you took the photo and actually turned a pedal. So I think that might be a bodge.
And also,
right
it
there.
looks terrible, those cable ties. Like, at least use black cable ties, please.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. Right, well, do make sure you keep your hacks and bodges coming in using the hashtag GCN Hack We love them. And next week, we've got Hack of the Month coming up for you.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Now to Caption of the Week. Big moment where we give you a photo, you give us a caption, and someone wins a big prize.
Oh, yeah. Now, first of all, I have to give an honorary mention to Michael McDermott. Unfortunately, you haven't won, but you probably know why, even if you did make us laugh. So, the winner of the Camelback GCN water bottle for this week is Mo184, who said, "Hey, Marcel, that's really an aero and all, but you do actually need to be on the bike, not beside it."
And that's a good point.
Yeah, that made me chuckle.
So now to your photo this week, which is of Jesus Herrada.
Crikey, that's some pronunciation right there. That's not what we're used to on GCN.
At the Tour of Oman, I believe.
Yeah, okay. Shall I get started? Jesus, if you needed the toilet, the portaloos are just over there. Little bit of a laugh?
I think it's pretty good, yeah.
Okay,
you
right.
might have just ruined half the entries.
Well, I'd suggest you don't go down the Portaloo route, but you know. Anyway, it's up for grabs. The GCN water bottle. Get stuck in the comment section down below. We pick the winner. You find out next week. Jesus Herrada?
Herrada. You've got to roll your R's. If you can't roll your R's, then you can't.
Herrada.
Herrada. It's 2 R's.
Herrada. Jesus Herrada. Right, before we get on to what is coming up on the channel next week, how about having a little look through under some of the great comments that you've been leaving under videos from last week, particularly loads and loads of great ones under our commute aero videos. So how much faster is one bike luggage compared to another? This one from Laurent Parmentier. This was completely unnecessary and I quite like it. It's kind of how we felt, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then CNE said, "Go commando at the office, pants and socks, wasted watts." Good point, and he did it in rhyming couplets.
Yeah, so I read that actually last night, and I followed his advice.
We didn't need that. We did not need that.
Yeah, you stick them on your side.
Yeah, okay.
I'll deal with the pants.
Yeah.
Right, sorry. Moving swiftly on then, how about this from TR Beyond? So loved the video, glad you talked about the yaw factor, but what about the boss factor? I.e., I'm going to be late to work unless I kick it into high gear. It seems like the boss factor might be the most important aerodynamic option of all. I'm not sure about the aerodynamics of the boss factor, but yeah, motivation is high when you're going to be late, isn't it?
I reckon I got most of my training back in the day when I was late for something and had to peg it to get there on time.
Yeah. Right, now, another big comment piece on GCN was actually last week's GCN show, where we asked the question of whether bike shops were actually worth fighting for.
Yeah, we had well over 1,000 comments and 65% of you were in favour of supporting local bike shops. But there was a lot of displeasure voiced by people who didn't like crappy local bike shops.
That's right, so the moral of the story seems to be that we should all support good local bike shops, and then hopefully quality will win out.
So this week coming up for you, on Wednesday we have How to Save Energy. On Thursday we have the biggest bike teams. On Friday, indoor training with the Yates twins of Mitchells and Scott.
I'm looking forward to that one. Saturday, we've got me, your new presenter.
Oh.
That's right, it's you, Emma. Check it out, including a trip to Assos, am I right?
Yep.
Nice. Sunday, we've got a behind the scenes with Fabric. So those are they made the saddles that Matt and I used whilst we tried to follow you up Taiwan KM Challenge.
The bikes were really heavy, I heard.
That's right, yeah, that was what held us back. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Monday is, of course, the racing news show, and then we'll be right back here Tuesday for the GCN show. Now, we're getting towards the end of the show, but there is still time, as always, for Extreme Corner. Nice work.
Is that right?
Yeah, it is, yes, but on. Now, this week we have, well, it's mind-blowing, actually. This is Adolf Silva attempting a 90-foot gap jump backflip at the recent Dark Fest. That means a lot to you, doesn't it?
I assume it's some kind of cool festival of coolness.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh my God, bro.
Oh my word. That is, yeah, that is, isn't it? I mean, fair play to him for riding that out.
I'm petrified just looking at it.
Yeah, Matt would have crashed for sure. I reckon we would have ridden it out, wouldn't we?
No, I think anybody would have crashed.
Well, yeah,
it's just
fair enough.
insane.
Well, yeah, it's not bad knocking your head on the handlebars and having your hand drag along the floor and still managing to ride it out. But there we go. Anyway, to put some kind of context around a 90-foot gap jump, which probably doesn't mean very much to most of us, here is another angle of said jump. Not the fateful jump, but anyway. See, 90-foot gap jump. That's a big gap jump.
That is huge.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have noticed that you have a blue jumper, which is rather nice.
Thanks, Emma. Yeah, I'm glad you noticed. I'm glad you mentioned. So this is, in all seriousness, this is part of a new range that has just landed in the GCN shop. A load of new colours of t-shirts and sweatshirts as well. And yeah, the navy blue is part of it. Oh yeah, and also GCN fan kit. We've got that stealth camo chain link, which I really like actually. So make sure you head over to shop.globalcyclenetwork.com to go check those out.
And don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And if you would like to check out our Commuter Row Challenge, which was just last week, click down here.
That's right. What is the best commuter luggage?